Here.
Councilmember Shealy. Here. Councilmember Lewis. Here. Councilmember Mitchell. Here. Councilmember Wagner. Here. Councilmember Gregory. Here. Councilmember Waring. Councilmember Seekings. Here. Councilmember Shea. Councilmember Griffin. Here. Councilmember Moody. Here. Councilwoman Jackson. Here. Mayor Tecklenburg.
Here. And now if you would like to join us, Councilmember Gregory will join us with a prayer and a pledge of allegiance.
Heavenly Father, as we come to do the work of the city of Charleston, let us understand that our differences is our strength as we move toward one. Give us the ability to discern what is right for our city and our citizens. God, we need you now as a city, as a state, and as a country. Please, God, grant us your grace in this time of need. Peace. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You might want to recognize LaGree Ellington, who's one of our former city council members. He's sitting right behind. See the big guy?
Yeah.
LaGree Ellington. He's a former city.
Bill, I said that I think your no comma thing is really stuck. Your no comma is stuck. You got everybody in line.
Huh?
It's been several years.
Yeah, okay. So, if I may just begin with a little public safety notice. In the most unlikely event that we would need to evacuate the building, do not use the elevator. We have these two exit doors here and then one over to from the room to my right, and the two stairways going downstairs, and then the one stairway going out. So just, it's very unlikely, but if we would need to leave the building, that is the way out. Now, first I'd like to have a short proclamation recognizing this being Women in Construction Week. Is Janet Bates here this evening? Please come forward. So she's the president of the local chapter of the National Association of Women in Construction, which is not new, but
pretty new.
Pretty new. So whereas the National Association of Women in Construction, the Palmetto chapter, has distinguished itself since August 26, 2018 as voice of women in construction in Charleston, Berkeley, and Dorchester County, and the work done by them has benefited the region through community development and educational programs. The chapter has unceasingly promoted the employment and advancement of women in the construction industry. And whereas the construction community represented by this chapter has been a driving force in fostering community development through renovation and beautification projects, promotion of skilled trades careers, and a positive vision of the future. And whereas the chapter has sought to achieve successful results for our region and surrounding areas in a cooperative spirit with other organizations, now, therefore, I, John J. Tecklenburg, Mayor of the City of Charleston, do proclaim next week to be Women in Construction Week. And we thank you for your leadership, Ms. Janet, and I present you this here proclamation. And would you like to say a short remarks to the council?
Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
Let's do this.
I'm really loud too.
There we go.
Thank you very much. Our chapter was officially chartered in August of last year with 49 members, and we have grown substantially to 70 members as of today. We are now the largest chapter in the South Atlantic region of the National Association of Women in Construction. And these women are powerful, and they have a voice in this community that is unceasing, and they are very excited to be part of finding a solution for our industry's labor problems by encouraging young women and boys to get involved with our industry as early as elementary school, teaching them about the opportunities, the plethora of opportunities that they have by joining us. So thank you. I really appreciate this.
Terrific.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I want to shout out to Ruth Jordan, our minority business and women enterprise facilitator. She's been working with this group, and also point out to council, you're all invited. We are, as a city, help sponsor the Black Business Expo, which is this weekend. There's a taste of, you want to share a comment about that, Ruth? Yeah, please come forward to the microphone.
And again, congratulations to the Women in Construction. I was their keynote speaker for that chartering event. Such a great, great group. The African American Expo is going to be March 8th and 9th. And it's going to be an exciting time here in Charleston. We're expecting about 10 to 15,000 people to go through the expo. It starts with a Taste of Charleston at the Aquarium on Friday, March the 8th, and then on March the 9th, it will be the Expo, Business Expo, and they have 5 pillars to include education, health, community involvement, and business and entrepreneurship. So we're asking all of you to support the Black Expo for its 20th year here in the city of Charleston. And again, thank you.
Terrific. So next, I have the really distinct honor to introduce to council and to our citizens some very special guests to the city of Charleston this week. If you would come forward as I call your name, Commander Chris Bruska, Commander James Hoey, Command Master Chief Weber Roberts, and Lieutenant Roman Metzger. And I'd also like to ask retired Captain Pat Kevaney, who's the chair of the commissioning committee and president of the local Navy League, because this Saturday at 10 o'clock at the Columbus Street Terminal in Charleston will be the commissioning of the 6th vessel that has held the name of the USS Charleston in the U.S. Navy, and we're so proud of that. We're just honored to have y'all here with us tonight. So I'm going to read yet another proclamation that I will share with you, and then ask Commander if you would like to make some remarks. And this is a little lengthy, but it's really some great historical information that I think everyone would enjoy. Whereas the city of Charleston has a deep and rich naval heritage dating back to the Revolutionary War Battle of Sullivan's Island, which occurred on June 28th of 1776. Soon thereafter, the first USS Charleston, a rogue galley, which is depicted, by the way, in the the new symbol for the ship that you'll see over here to our right. A rogue galley was built in Charleston and used to defend South Carolina's coast during the quasi-war with France. Who heard of that war before? Okay. Whereas in 1889, the second USS Charleston, a protected cruiser, was commissioned and served in the Pacific and Spanish-American War. Tragically, she was lost due to a wreck in 1899 off the Philippines. Whereas launched in 1904, the third USS Charleston, a protected cruiser, went on to serve in World War I. The vessel was part of the convoy to transport the first troops of the American Expeditionary Forces to France on June 14th of 1917. Whereas the most decorated of the eventual 6 ships, until now, the 4th USS Charleston, a patrol gunboat, was launched in 1936 and served valiantly in World War II, receiving a battle star and other accommodations. She patrolled off the coast of Alaska, mainly from Kodiak. And whereas USS Charleston, the 5th ship to be named after the Holy City, was launched in 1967, serving in the Vietnam War, the vessel earned awards and campaign ribbons for her service. And whereas the 6th and newest USS Charleston is an Independence-class littoral combat ship. This ship is built for the new Navy war fighter. It is faster, more agile, and more technologically advanced than previous U.S. Navy vessels. Whereas the USS Charleston, LCS-18, will transit has already come from Mobile, Alabama, and brought to her namesake city for her official commissioning ceremony, which will take place this Saturday, March the 2nd. She will then leave and go through the Panama Canal, reaching her home port of San Diego. Whereas we take this opportunity to recognize the USS Charleston and her crew to express our deepest appreciation for all members, past and present, of the United States military and their families. We thank you for your selfless and brave service, which ensures the safety of our great nation and all of our citizens. Now, therefore, I, John J. Tecklenburg, Mayor of the City of Charleston, do hereby proclaim this week, Sunday, February 24th to this coming Saturday, as the USS Charleston Week in the City of Charleston. So I'll just further share that Sandy and I were blessed to be able to go to Mobile, Alabama, along with Councilmember Wagner and former Mayor Riley and his wife Charlotte, who is the sponsor of the ship. Each ship has a sponsor. And boy, Charlotte really broke that champagne across the bow of that ship. You'd be amazed how that petite lady was able to crack that bottle. But when you're standing underneath this vessel, this was before it got put in the water, it is amazing. This is an amazing vessel, and it's really fascinating. It doesn't have the big propellers on the back of it. It is jet propelled, and it's like a giant jet ski on steroids. It is an amazing piece of technology, and we had the pleasure of meeting Commander Chris Bruska, and I'm going to call him forward to give us some remarks. Commander?
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Wow. Every time I see that crest broken out into something big like that, it still gives me goosebumps, because it was about 2 years ago when my XO and Master Chief, standing to my left, sat down in a room and started trying to figure out what we want our crest to look like. And after several iterations, this is what we decided, and it still hits me today and gives me goosebumps when I look at it. So I am biased, I admit, but I still think it's the best crest in the Navy. So it just looks awesome. Well, thank you, Mayor and council members, and to the city members who are also able to make it tonight. Thank you for coming and for the proclamation. It was about a year and a half ago, just like the mayor said, we were in Mobile, Alabama, christening the ship, and I still have the smell of champagne on my uniform. It doesn't quite come off very easily. But the mayor and I, there's a process in place on where a ship gets to be commissioned, and it would seem very obvious that the ship with a namesake of a city on the coast would get commissioned on and in that city, but it isn't quite automatic like that. And so we had to make a request, and the person who approves that request is the Secretary of the Navy. Now, the current Secretary was just appointed shortly before he came out to Mobile, so we were his first christening that he had attended. So the mayor and I took advantage of his him being a little naive, and so we walked up and said, "Hey, Mr. Secretary, we want to make sure we can commission the ship in Charleston. Doesn't that make a lot of sense?" He said, "Sure does to me." He said, "Great, that's where we're going to do it." And that's where it was ever since. So we sent the formal request off anyway, but that was more of just a formality. But I'll tell you, the mayor and I ganged up on him when he was there, took advantage. The secretary is coming himself. He wanted to make sure he came to this commissioning, so we're really excited to have him. So I look forward to all of you coming out and getting a tour on board the ship. And on Saturday, there'll be a big crowd to get in the line, and you'll come see the ship that's named in your honor. And I couldn't be more proud to be the commanding officer of that ship. So thank you very much.
Commander, while you're here this week, you may want to see the town a little bit. And so I have for you a key to the city of Charleston. While you're here, it'll open all our doors. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Absolutely. Appreciate it. And Pat came up, but I got to tell you that the commissioning committee has put so much time and effort into making this all possible at a local area. I want to recognize and ask for a round of applause for Captain Kevany as well. Pat, thank you. So I don't know.
There were a lot of people that have been involved all along.
That's right. Absolutely.
Thank you.
I don't know if you noticed also in the crest, but they have a motto for the ship, and they did a variation of the state motto of South Carolina, which is in Latin on our state seal, Dum Spiro Spero, while I breathe I hope, and given the nature of the business that they're in, the motto of the crest of the USS Charleston is, while we breathe, we fight. Yeah. All right, next I'd like to call forward a number of students who attend the early college high school here in Charleston. If y'all would just come forward along with your representatives from your school and join me back behind myself. Boy, we got a whole bunch of students here. And also representing the faculty is Vanessa Denny, Benjamin Flo, Carol Green, Daniel Parks, Melanie McDonald, and Rhiannon Rainsford. The students we have by name, and if y'all don't mind, we'll call your names out when we give out the certificates. So for those of you who may not know, the Early College High School is a Charleston County School District school. Its program is based at the Trident Technical College Palmer campus on the east side of Charleston. And what it is that students from high schools all over the county are eligible to attend, and they're able to access classes at Trident Tech and take what they call dual enrollment classes and have the ability to graduate high school with an associate's degree, a college degree as well. And this is the first time in Charleston that this program has been done. It just started last year, so I believe most of these students are sophomores, isn't that correct? And so they add another class every year, and 2 more years they'll have a full contingent of four grades in the early college high school. The city has been fortunate to partner with the early college high school, and we've sent over guest speakers. Myself, several of our council members have gone. We brought students to various cultural spaces throughout the community and provide understanding of local government and opportunities to engage in the community. Tonight, these students are here because they all made the Trident Tech Dean's List. They're in high school, but they made the Trident Tech Dean's List. Yeah. Yeah, we're very proud of them. So this means, of course, that they've done a remarkable job excelling at college level courses and have done a remarkable job as high school sophomores starting their college career off early. You should all be proud of your accomplishments, and it's been a pleasure for the city to partner with you. Special thanks to staff members John Mitchell and Mindy Sturm, who have kind of led our partnership with the early college high school. I know all of you will continue to excel and exceed. We look forward to the opportunities we'll have in the future to work with you. And at this point, I'm going to ask John Mitchell if he would call out everybody's name who has a certificate, and if y'all would just walk over and get your certificate from John.
All right. Lillian Avery. Tyler Bays. Tyler Bays. Tatiana Brown. Eric Center. Wyland Cortez. Lauren Daly. Jalen Irvin. Ruby Fabre. Carlota Garcia Torres. Adrian Lockwood. Dion Nunn. Alexis Pinckney. Daniel Richardson. Jack Rao. Ellie Salzer. Kobe Shipman. Aaron Splint.
Would the principal or somebody from the school like to share a few remarks with us about the school?
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm actually not the best person to do that. Kobe.
Kobe.
Come on up. Do you want to share some remarks about early college with somebody else? I know Kyra will.
You're on.
You're on.
Come on. You can do it.
Talk about your experience. You came in as a freshman, what you've learned.
So it's been a long journey. We started all off as freshmen. We made a bond together. And so far we made it through these college classes together as well. We help each other out in classes. We have little study groups. That's all I really have to say.
Well, I'm just gonna add that I believe the early college high school is a premier example of not just workforce, but career development and getting kids ready for college. It's the best example we have in Charleston County. And I know from time to time we have to deal with the challenges of our school system, that there are still challenges and problems out there, but there's a lot of good things happening as well, and we have to celebrate those things. And these young men and women are a cause for celebration that our system can work.
Mr.
All
Mayor.
right, thank you all very much.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir. Councilmember Moody.
I won't call the name, but there's one of these young ladies up here was involved recently in a multi-day, and it's still an ongoing shared future project. And I didn't know her before, and I got to meet her, got to work with her, and she's incredible. And I just tell you that we're in good shape.
We're in good shape.
If we have these kids going forward, and I know every single one of them, your parents and everyone, your teachers are proud of you, and so are we. So anyway, thank you.
Wonder who that is. Thank you all very much. Okay. I do like to recognize when former council members are in the House. We have with us tonight, I understand, Legree Ellington. Legree, are you here? There you are. He's a former city council member. Just want to welcome you back to the House, Mr. Ellington. Thank you for being with us. Okay, I guess we'll wait just a minute to clear a little traffic. Oh, okay. So next we have, I think, 6 public hearings that have been advertised. The first one is ordinance regarding a zoning change for 1004 Physician Drive. Mr. Morgan will explain each item as they come forward. Anyone from the public that would like to address the issue is welcome to come forward. We ask that you keep your remarks to 2 minutes, please, during these sessions. Mr. Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. So this is a property, as the mayor said, at 1004 Physicians Drive. It's actually between 3 different streets, between Savage Road and Henry Tecklenburg Drive and Physicians Drive to the northwest. And it is a vacant piece of property. We have some images here. I believe we do. Here we go. Aerial image. It's been exclusively office up to this point along Physicians Drive, and it was zoned that way in the general office district. And you can see some of the images of the site. This is across the street, SCNG substation, and then another office across the other street there, and further back behind it on Physicians Drive. And the request is to rezone from that general office, which this area was originally envisioned to develop as, to a CT district, or commercial transitional, which is our most limited, more open commercial district. It would allow for a restaurant. It still would allow for offices, and staff has analyzed this and realized that this is an area of town, particularly around the hospital, that could use some other services in addition to just the offices that are there, and so having that diversity of uses might be helpful. And so staff and Planning Commission were supportive of the rezoning request to CT.
Would anyone like to be heard on this matter? I would like to recognize my friend and the owner, Dr. Marcelo Hockman is in the house tonight. Doctor, if you'd like to be recognized, just stand. He's a fine gentleman and a good citizen. Hearing none, the matter comes before council.
Second.
Councilmember Shealy.
Mr. Morgan, is the plan for a restaurant? I mean, I heard you mention
that has been discussed, but of course, when we rezone it, it would go to any of the uses that are allowed in CT, which includes retail and offices as well as restaurants. Yes, sir. That is what's been discussed.
Thank you.
And despite the address on Physicians Drive, the property is really at the corner of Savage Road and Henry Tecklenburg, so it's a very prominent corner and deserves, you know, a real active use, if I may say. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Item number 2.
Okay. This is on Line Street, Line Street downtown. It is 41 and 41.5 Line Street. It's less than 1/10 of an acre. It is requesting rezoning from light industrial to our mixed-use MU2 workforce housing classification. As you'll notice from the image here, it basically is surrounded now by MU2 workforce housing. That's the light blue that you see on the image here. Courier Square is down to the south, and you can see that in some of the images. You can see Courier Square under construction in that image, and a new mixed-use development is on the north side of Line Street that will get under construction soon. Here is a street view of the property, and you see Courier Square in the rear behind it under construction. And here it is in our Century 5 plan map that shows that it's part of the urban core, which is the designation we look for the most intensive types of uses, which are the MU2 workforce housing designations. Both staff and Planning Commission recommend approval.
Would anyone like to be heard on this matter? Hearing none.
Move for approval.
Comes to council with approval and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Number 3 is deferred, but we're still going to announce it, and since it's been advertised for a public hearing, if anybody would like to speak to this matter, of course, they may do so.
And so this property, the request is to be added to the accommodations overlay. The accommodations overlay already exists on the property to the west, as designated with the crosshatch. These both front on Spring Street. There is also some other accommodation zoning further down Spring towards Haygood, and at the old Wendy's site further down between Spring and Cannon and the crosstown there. I think we have a couple of aerial images. You can see the property here. It was formerly home to a gas station. The gas station has recently been demolished. It will have an assisted living facility to the northeast or eastern side of the property. The grassy lot that you see in this image will become an assisted living facility there. And to the west is already zoned for accommodations use. There's the gas station that was demolished on the site.
All right, would anyone like to be heard on this matter? All right, seeing none, it's deferred, so we'll move on to the next item, number 4. Oh, Councilmember Griffin.
Was that property was sold when it was a gas station and then demolished after it was sold?
I believe so, yes, sir. Yes, sir, because it's just recently been demolished.
That's what I thought. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Councilmember Mitchell, then Gregory.
What, the Spring Street? That's where the station is.
200 Spring Street, it's been torn down, yes, sir.
Back in the 50s, that's where I was living there. It used to be a 3-story house there way back in the 50s. And my 2 sisters was born there on 200 Spring Street. And they later on it changed. That's when they had the hotel there, St. James Hotel, and we had a Piggly Wiggly there up in that area.
Really?
And yeah, all that back in the 50s, up until 1960.
I see. Absolutely.
It's changed a lot in that area.
The gas station is gone already. They've already demolished it.
One thing I would like the city to check to see when they changed those streets' name, Haggard Avenue and Courtney Drive. When I grew up, it was Chickapan Street and Chestnut Street. So I want to find when the street's name was changed.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Interesting. Councilmember Gregory.
Would you verify that district for me, please?
I'm sorry?
District. Yes. District 3.
Let's see. We will double check that. Yeah. Yes, sir. Should be. Okay. Yes, sir.
All right. Now we'll proceed with number 4.
Okay. And this is a rezoning request in West Ashley. It's actually not a rezoning, excuse me, it's a zoning. This is a recently annexed property at the corner of Magnolia Road and Live Oak Avenue. You see on the image here, the property's outlined. There were 3 subdivided lots that were subdivided by Charleston County before annexation to the city. The property backs up to single-family houses down Live Oak Avenue, across the street from Live Oak, and then to the northwest is a multifamily development in the area that is shown in yellow on this image. You can see the property here. There was formerly a church on the property that was sold. The church was demolished. It's a vacant lot now, and again, it has reverted to the 3 originally subdivided lots that Charleston County subdivided on the site. To meet the city's zoning requirements for lots of that size, we are recommending an SR4 zoning designation for the property, and both staff and Planning Commission recommend approval for SR4 on the property.
Would anyone like to be heard on this matter?
Move for approval.
I have a motion to approve. Any discussion? Councilmember Jackson?
I would just like to be reminded, if it's the 3 TMS numbers, why is it just called 0.36 of an acre? Are we dealing with...
That's the total acreage of the 3 lots together.
Okay. So we don't have to know the individual acres to...
I mean, we can calculate those, but that was not part. When it was brought into the city, it was all 3 lots together at that acreage.
Okay, and that doesn't impact the size of the lots to be...
No, ma'am. We already analyzed those, and they most closely match the SR4 of our zoning districts.
And so 3 single-family homes would be able to be built here?
Yes, sir.
I see. Okay. Anyone else? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Number 5.
Okay. And this is a vacant property on Stinson Drive in West Ashley. This is another pending annexation. It is just north of the West Ashley Greenway, which is the green strip you see running east-west on the image in front of you here. It's surrounded on 3 sides by a multifamily development shown in the yellow. The requested zoning would match that multifamily development with the DR1F designation, so it would be exactly the same density as those properties there. It is across the street from single-family houses, and then of course Savannah Highway is further to the north where you've got commercial development. Our new fire station is under construction on the properties that are zoned GB just to the northeast on Savannah Highway. The site, we have some other images here. You can see it's a wooded site now, again in the midst of the multifamily development, townhouse development that surrounds it. Here's the actual site from the street. Here's the property to the north of it with townhouses, and then the property to the south that's a larger townhouse development. And both staff and Planning Commission recommended for the DR1F on the property.
Would anyone like to be heard on this matter? Yes, ma'am. Please state your name and address first and speak in the mic.
My name is Rhonda Khalil. I'm a property owner at 507 Stinson Drive. I have a letter. Can I put it on record?
Please speak in the mic. Yes.
So my name is Rhonda Khalil. I own a couple of condos in Wildwood Townhomes community. It's a community of 93 cute little condos on the Greenway. They are 1970s buildings that were converted into condos about 15 years ago. My concern is that the lot next door, if it's going to be developed, it's going to need to be filled in order to develop it, and that's obviously going to really risk causing flooding for us. As it is, about a quarter of the lot is high, and then there's a dramatic drop-off, like 4 or 5 feet, into a lowland. Part of it's wetland, I think a small part, but I mean, it is low. So there is no way that this lot can support 18 units, 18, which is what they're proposing, but up to 20, I believe. I really think that if that happens, it's going to flood us out. And our little condos sell for a maximum of $128,000. They rent for $1,250. We don't have a lot of money to deal with drainage issues. These are affordable housing. We can't afford to fix flooding that's caused by development next door. So my request is that it remain at a limitation of 12 units for that acre, or defer it until we can do a study of whether that lot can actually support that number of units. It certainly will require major stormwater research if that lot is to be developed. And it's been for sale since 2010, and I believe under contract a few times. So there's something troublesome about that particular lot, or it would have been developed way before now. Okay.
Thank you very much. Would anyone else like to be heard on this matter? Yes, sir. Please come forward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council, my name is Patrick Head. I work for JJR Development Team. This is a lot on Stinson Drive, as she mentioned, and we are looking to annex into the city. We've done a lot of projects in the city over the years and would always prefer to work with the city when we can. We just ask that it be the same zoning as what's engulfing it now, which is DR1F. As she mentioned, statutorily, that zoning would allow for 18 units. However, we haven't begun design on this project, so we don't know what we can actually do there. What we do know is we will work with the top engineers and architects to work on the project, and whatever we do build will be done to best practice as we would typically do. Additionally, the project is intended to be fee simple townhouses similar to what's at Wildwood next door, with a few of those units we'd like to utilize for Gianna's office for workforce housing, teachers or firefighters. And while I appreciate the concern of the neighbors, this project will have to go through numerous reviews with the city, including extensive TRC, and we'll have to address drainage or engineering issues in that process. So, thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Would anyone else like to be heard on this matter? Hearing none, it comes to council. Councilmember Shealy.
Mr. Morgan, did I hear that right, that this is to be annexed into the city and it's not in the city currently?
It's pending annexation. It's had initial readings, but it's not had its final reading for annexation. That is correct.
All right, what differences in the county zoning, what advantages are they going to get by coming into the city?
There's more density in the city zoning that surrounds it. The county zoning is 12 units an acre zoning, and the city zoning that surrounds it is, as the folks were talking about, it's basically 19.4 units an acre. So with the acreage that's there, it looks like potentially as many as 18 units could be there. Of course, if there are wetlands on the site, that would subtract from the highland, and we calculate based on highland, which the county actually does not. They calculate based on just total area. So it would be the 12 units in the county, but we would subtract out any highland wetland area to create that 19.4 units per acre calculation.
Member Jackson, and then Moody.
Thank you. I happened to be at the Planning Commission when this item was heard on this past Monday, or Wednesday, the 20th, and then I got home that night and saw my city council packet, so even without the conversation about the zoning annexation compared to zoning, I had written myself a note on this item to just find out how it could be that we would have this on our council agenda when the Planning Commission was literally voting on it the night that the council agenda was published. So that's just helping me learn the process of the city for these things. And now I guess I would like to add the question of how can we be entertaining a change in zoning if we haven't even annexed the property into the city. You know that I'm very concerned about stormwater management planning, and I don't think that our process is really geared to right now evaluating the ability of the stormwater. Yes, if they're wetlands, then of course those are subtracted from the buildable area. But in terms of how we're going to see this property developed so that it doesn't have any negative impact on the neighborhood that's fully built out around it, I guess I would like to make a motion to defer this item from our agenda tonight and come back and take it up again when it's time to annex it.
We have a motion to defer in a second. Councilmember Moody, I think you had your hand up, and then Griffin, and then Wagner.
Well, I was not prepared to vote on the motion to defer. I was going to speak basically what, and I didn't catch his name, the owner of the property, or the owner. There's a couple things about this. Number one, this piece of property is surrounded completely by similar zoning, so it's not something out of the ordinary. There is some wetlands on this property, but the property that's really developable, is my understanding, is that it's higher than the property around there. So it's not going, if there's any water flowing off of it, it's probably already flowing off. But the main drainage channel or pipe for that area runs through, I don't know what corner it is, but that corner closest to the V there, the drainage pipe runs through that area right in there. And that pipe that drains that whole area has been collapsed. I mean, it doesn't function at all. And my understanding was that the developer was going to replace all of that or fix all of that as part of their infrastructure to make this thing work. So I was prepared to support this. I think it meets all the standards. We've got to annex it, and then we got to zone it. We got not more hearings, but we got more votes on this. So my understanding was that I got some concerns from the residents, but I think fixing that piping, as we've said many times, if you fix the pipes that are already in the ground, you clean out the ditches, you do all that stuff, you're going to solve most of your drainage. The fact that this property has already got wetlands on it, so you're not going to be able to build on all of it, that allowing it to come into the city and zone it like this, like everything around it, you're doing the right thing. So anyway, I'm going to probably vote against the deferral and vote in favor of the the rezoning.
We didn't have a motion on the floor yet, so don't.
We did, we had a motion, somebody second.
Motion to defer on the floor.
Yeah,
right.
That's right.
Councilmember Griffin?
I've heard a lot of concerns now from both sides. I agree that pipe needs to be fixed, and anytime a developer is going to come in and fix some drainage, that's one less thing that we have to do. What concerns me is that, we may give an increase in density when we haven't seen any drainage plans. And what concerns me about that is, I don't know, maybe this gentleman can answer whether y'all have met with the county and showed them any plans or anything like that. Do y'all have a PUD in place or anything like that? Has anything been done? Because for me, whenever we give somebody density, I like to at least know how far along in the process they've gotten. Have they come up with any ideas? Have they done any sort of planning for drainage? Because once we give them the zoning, we can't take it back away. So, we have to be very, very careful about increasing density. It makes sense to give them the same density that's around them. It makes sense for them to fix the piping that's on the property. But, this is an opportunity for us to find out from this group how much work they've done ahead of time, because once we give them this zoning, we can't take it away from them.
Okay. I don't know if you want to reply to that. I think we would allow you to. But if not, that's fine. We'll keep on going.
Yeah. We have not spoken to the county. We don't have a PUD. We have just started the process on this project, so we have a survey. We've had our engineers begin looking at it.
Right. But they would have to meet our requirements. I think Wagner was next.
Yes, and then Councilmember Shade.
Then Shade. I'll get back to you.
I just had my question.
I'm still confused here. How are we zoning something we don't own or has not even been annexed into the city? Are we cutting the deal here to go from 18 to 14?
No,
what's going on here?
I think we often do this.
Y'all are...
The final reading on the zoning would not be taking place until the property was annexed in the city. But they're asking for a first reading, and the sequencing based on when the annexation petition came in, because sometimes this happens and we bring them to you all before you get the final reading. It just made sense to go ahead and move forward and get your recommendation or your first vote on it.
Okay, well, the reason I'm concerned is I'm the neighbor that could get flooded over this. I mean, I back up the bill right there, just on this side. I got the other side of the greenway, and we have Citadel Woods and a whole bunch of other stuff back on that side. And so I'd normally go with Bill on this one, but I'd like to see a little bit more information first, please.
Councilmember Shade.
Mr. Morgan, can you go back to the other slide that showed
which slide?
Surrounding property, that there's that graph? No,
this one?
What we're asking to do, if I understand you correctly, when we annex this property and give this the zoning, it's going to match the zoning that's surrounding all this other property.
Yes, sir.
And once we annex this property, we're going to have control over it.
Yes, sir.
So when it comes up before us for development, whatever is going to be erected there, is going to have to go through our regular processes with our regular boards, and we're going to have the ability at this point to control it. If we don't annex it, if we don't zone it, and we don't annex it, then we lose control over it.
That is correct.
And you're going to have for lack of a better way of saying this, a hole in the donut, and that could have the negative impact that we're trying to avoid. So I want to urge my council members to listen to what you are suggesting, follow Councilmember Moody's lead on this, that once we annex this property and zone it that is consistent with the current zoning that's surrounding it on all three sides, then we're going to have the ability to control what you're concerned about. If we defer this, we may scare this person off and not come into the city, and then we lose the ability to control what we want to do with this property. So I would urge all of y'all to vote against the deferment and vote for moving this process on.
Councilmember Waring.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I can't agree with Councilman Shahid anymore. Mr. Morgan, would you go over something that you already said previously when you would start the public presentation? In the county, when the county looks at development, they look at the entire
acreage, okay. Right. We subtract out the highlands and only calculate our densities based on the highland area.
Now, what this good lady needs to know, in our process, by subtracting out the wetlands, it reduces the number of units a person could do. We also have the 1984 study, And I want to bet you that in that study, it probably calls for a larger pipe than the one that's actually collapsed, okay? When this developer develops it in the city, you better believe he's going to come up to that higher standard. Now, I don't know that that's going to be the case in the county. From a flooding standpoint, when you develop a piece of property, we just say TRC. That is not an easy process. Ask anybody who goes through it. I went through it once, and I had dark hair before I went through it. So we hear your concern, but you're going to have more effect on what you would like to see happen if it's developed in the city, because there are a number of public processes that you have a chance to have impact on, as well as your workout buddy right here is going to be, it's Councilman Gregory. They work out together. But you're going to have a lot of input around this table that you don't even know that you already have. So you've had an impact tonight. So I think the final product would be probably a reduced product, a reduced number of units, and because the engineering will speak to that. And you're going to have a larger pipe than whatever the county has in there right now, and you're probably going to have an updated drainage ordinance before this is developed, because our drainage guidelines are going to be developed before this comes to TRC. So the process will be a better process if developed in the city. With all due respect to our colleagues in the county. Thank you. So I will vote against the deferral.
So in timing, we're about to end our study of the doo-wop area for the drainage systems everywhere, and this would be a part of that area. So we'll have some recommendations that we could get the developer to help us pay for, which would be nice. Councilmember Gregory.
I retract my second on the deferral.
All right. Would anyone?
I'll second it.
We have a second. Okay. Councilmember Jackson, back to you.
Happy to retract my motion to defer since
Okay.
okay. But I would like to have my two questions answered, please. I would like for myself and whoever is interested here in the public realm, I don't understand how it is that we can have this item on our agenda when it was being heard the same night at the Planning Commission. So that's just a process question. And I also don't understand how it is that we can be voting on the zoning. If this is we've already given this a first reading.
That's correct.
Right. So basically, we'd be able to give it a second and a third reading tonight, correct?
But they've requested deferral on those so that they could be heard tonight for the first reading on the zoning to know where council stood on the zoning. And that we do that on a number of occasions with the annexations. Nothing can be zoned until finally zoned until you've given it final readings. So that would occur at a future meeting, and you would actually give the actual vote on the annexation at that meeting before you would then vote on the zoning at the same meeting.
So even though it doesn't, you told us just now when you came up that it was being deferred? I'm sorry, I didn't.
Yes, ma'am. It's marked deferred on your agenda. It's number 2 under K, bills up for second reading, marked as deferred.
I'm still on the public hearing side. So. All right, then may I understand how it is that you've been having this on our agenda tonight when it was on the Planning Commission's agenda on Wednesday?
So again, it had first reading, I guess, last month,
right.
And then that allowed us to put it on the Planning Commission agenda and get their recommendation that then comes forward tonight to you all, and then you all could give it a first reading based on what you've heard. And if you give it a first reading, then at a later meeting, probably in 2 weeks, you would have the final votes on the second and third votes on the annexation, and then immediately move for the final votes on the zoning on the property.
Okay, let me just follow that train of thought for another minute. I'm literally just trying to follow the bouncing balls. I apologize. So let's say the Planning Commission voted to oppose the change to the zoning. Then it would have required a supermajority vote
Yes,
by the council?
Yes, ma'am.
And how would we have known that in the published version of the agenda that came out the same night that the Planning Commission?
We just would have I would have reported as part of this presentation on the public hearings what the recommendation of the Planning Commission was.
Okay. I personally think that's a very important distinction whenever the public has a chance to understand how the council is going to be deliberating. So
And I think our general policy would be if the Planning Commission had not recommended for it, we would have already marked it deferred on the agenda anyway if it was something that was creating a controversy.
So you would put
like
out
that.
an amended
Yes, ma'am.
agenda?
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
Councilmember Seekings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just very briefly, in what is a draconian process to get annexed in and get zoned, I mean, this actually seems to me a pretty good example of us moving something parallel and forward so they all come together at the same time, giving us an opportunity to speak to it. It's still slow, and one of the things that is for sure, as I do believe it was said already, but I'm sure we can get the developer to agree that our new stormwater requirements are going to be in place, and this property is going to be subject to it. It's a high piece of property with a crushed pipe that's going to have new stormwater regulations put on it, which is exactly the piece of property we want to have those regulations on because it's the high point, it's the crown of that little triangle. So I do think we're doing the right thing. I agree with Councilmember Moody. I don't know if we still have a motion to defer. I'm not going to vote for it. I think we need to. Okay. So let's give this first reading and see where it all goes from there. We can have conversations with the developer in between to make sure they get the picture on what the stormwater regulations will be and how they're going to work together to make sure it all fits. And we still got the freeboard issue going out there too, which who knows how that's all going to go. So be careful what you ask for. You're about to come into a huge crossfire on all sorts of things that doesn't just include zoning. It includes new stormwater regulations, a freeboard requirement, and some neighbors who are nervous. So get ready.
All right, Councilmember Moody.
Yeah, I just wanted to make one further point. This whole section of land that's part of, the mayor alluded to the doo-wop area, that the actual drainage on this lot goes down kind of to where the new hotel is that Jimmy Palacios is building.
This way?
Yeah, it goes right in that way and then goes under Savannah Highway in an undersized pipe, feeds into the Citadel Mall drainage basin, which compounds and causes more problems there, goes around by Costco and out into the Stono River, okay? So that's the way the drainage on this lot goes now, and I'm hopeful that this whole area through here, that can be diverted some way down the Greenway and right straight into the Stono River and that way we gain more capacity in the Citadel Mall Basin. So, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that we can control here if we annex this in and take care of it. So, and I don't think the density is going to be that bad. I just wanted to point that out. Hopefully, as it goes through planning, you guys will take a look at that as we get the new regs. Thank you.
I don't think there's a motion on the floor. We're a motion to approve.
Okay, so you made the motion.
Waring, a second by Moody or Shade. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. We had one nay? Okay. A nay for Councilmember Griffin.
And Wagner.
Thank you. Wagner also. Thank you.
All right, now number 6.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is an ordinance that would help to create more affordable housing in the city of Charleston, and I believe you've given it a first and a second read. It comes to you from the Planning Commission. So the intent here is to provide more opportunities to create single-family affordable homes and cut bureaucratic red tape. This doesn't accelerate growth. It does not award additional density. It just helps to build more affordable housing. We've reviewed, the staff have reviewed the existing ordinances and case studies of built affordable housing projects that had to appear before the Board of Zoning Appeals. Most of our single-family detached homes that we build have to go for some type of variance, whether it's for lot coverage, setback, or frontage. So this would be a conditional use that would apply only to affordable houses. It would not apply to market rate housing. So only an affordable house would be eligible for these streamlined incentives. It reduces the setback and frontage requirements, and these houses would of course still fit in the neighborhood character. Doesn't change anything about the parking. Off-street parking still required. Creates flexible lot standards. And there's been a lot of discussion about the effect specifically on Ashleyville, Maryville. My staff have studied this extensively. And this is a basic zoning map that shows the zoning of Ashleyville, Maryville. Nearly all of the parcels in these neighborhoods are zoned for single family use. And this is a map that breaks down the parcels in Ashleyville, Maryville by the width of the lot. there's been a lot of discussion about the 50 by 100 foot historic lot pattern, which is a pattern that does exist here. However, if you look at this, the key item here are the red lots, the sort of maroon color, and those are lots that are already at less than 50 feet of frontage. And the lots that are in the green are lots that are between 50 and 100 feet of frontage, and then those that are in the yellow are over 100 feet of frontage. So there's really quite a bit of variance here and variation in the lots that have occurred over time naturally. The key thing here is that we really believe that this ordinance will not negatively impact neighborhoods throughout the city of Charleston. It will accelerate the construction of affordable housing everywhere in the city and eliminate the extra step before the BZA, which, as you all know, can add a month or 2 months to the process. And for affordable housing, every minute counts to deliver the construction of homes affordably. The last thing that I'll say about this, and we don't have an aerial here, we counted somewhere between 40 and 50 vacant lots just in Asheville, Maryville, vacant lots. Those lots are going to be built upon. They will be built upon. And those will either be larger market rate homes, or they will be affordable, smaller homes. They will be built upon. This is, in essence, an anti-gentrification ordinance. It is as close as you can get to accelerate the delivery of affordable housing everywhere throughout the city. In Rosemont, our own houses that we have built in Rosemont, our affordable houses, by our count, nearly every one of them had to go before the BCA for some variance, adding 1 or 2 months to the process every single time. So we think that this is something citywide that will really be beneficial to our own efforts and to the very few efforts of developers who build completely affordable single-family detached housing, although those are, of course, few and far between, unfortunately. So with that, I'll say this comes to you with a recommendation of approval from staff and a recommendation of disapproval from Planning Commission, so it will require 10 votes before each night.
Would anyone, we have the public comments. Can you wait? Oh, yeah. Okay. Would anyone like to be heard on this matter? Please come forward, state your name and address.
My name is Marcia Higgins, and I reside at 970 Main Street, west of the Ashley and Ashleyville. The main concern is that this ordinance would allow more houses, affordable houses in Ashleyville on smaller size lots. That would create a great problem for the community, which includes the roads are very narrow, the traffic, the parking, and probably some flooding problems too, because we've recognized some flooding issues since the affordable houses have been built recently. I have nothing against affordable housing. 7 have already been built in the Ashleyville community, and they look great. It enhances the community. The concern is building houses on these smaller lots that would create more houses built so close together and really would take away from the character of our community. So therefore, it is the request of the City Council that if you would please vote to support the decision of the Planning Commission to disapprove this ordinance. And we would ask if you would please support that decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Higgins. Would anyone else like to be heard?
My name is Janet Ansley. I reside at 840 Minnie Street in Ashleyville, and I come here to respectfully and humbly ask that you save our neighborhood and vote no against that many houses that we've heard, 6 on a lot that does not accommodate that much. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Annette B. Smalls, and I reside at 945 Sycamore Avenue in Asheville. And I'm asking y'all to vote no. I've talked with Representative Keith Waring He was at our neighborhood meeting. He promised us that the lots that he owned in Ashleyville would be 50 by 100. And I'm asking you, please, keep your promise that you made to us. We want our neighborhood. I love our neighborhood. And we want it to be uniform. The lots, when you make it smaller than 50 by 100, it creates a problem. The 50 by 100 is not large. You don't have no really you don't have no parking space that much. If you park your car in your yard, you don't have room for nobody else. And with the streets being so small, when we have, how you say, if an ambulance have to come in there, depends on how the people park, then you got a problem with the ambulance coming through. And I say, if our area and if our community, if it's, how you say, been this way for over 100 years, why do we have to change now? I don't have anything against affordable housing, but we already have 7 in there. If the affordable houses are supposed to be dispersed throughout the other areas, then put some of them someplace else. All I'm asking you to do is keep your word, because you own the largest tract of land in there right now that's not divided yet.
Thank you, ma'am.
Ms. Smalls. Ms. Smalls. Go ahead and have your first name.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Annette B. Smalls, and I'm also the Vice President of the Asheville Maryville Association.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Diana Hamilton. I live at 1219 Forbes Avenue on the Maryville side. I concur with everything that has been said so far. We ask that the City Council vote no to override the Planning Commission vote. I beg to disagree. The quality of life would be impacted negatively in our neighborhood, and that is our primary issue here. Also, in addition, we ask that the city come up with a mechanism or a plan to protect the oldest platted neighborhood in West Ashley, having been platted in 1885. We thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Would anyone else like to be heard on this matter? Yes, ma'am.
Thanks, everyone. My name is Bridget Lucier. I'm the president of Magnolia Neighborhood, and I am very opposed to this ordinance. I am all for affordable housing. If this ordinance was an affordable housing ordinance, I would support it. However, it is not. It should be called the Sweeping Density Increase and Setback and Frontage Requirement Decrease Ordinance. And I think if it was titled that, this room would be full today, because it affects all of the city of Charleston, anywhere that doesn't have an HOA to protect their home. I do not see in any way, shape, or form in the written language of the ordinance how you are going to be able to make these homes affordable. The ordinance only applies to the size of the homes and the income, or the size of the setbacks, the frontage requirement, the density, and that the income level of the people who buy or rent the home fall under 120% of average if it's purchased and under 80% of average if it's rented. That has nothing to do with the cost of the home. You don't have the authority to do that, as Christopher Morgan pointed out at the Planning Commission meeting where this idea was shot down. So I have 2 single-space pages of notes here about the reasons. So the main thing is it doesn't address the cost of housing. Unintended consequence could be residential flooding. Unlike what was discussed earlier, precipitation that falls on impervious surface like a yard or unbuilt lot goes into the ground. It doesn't run off. When you fill the lot with pervious surfaces, it does run off. So this could cause flooding, and we don't want that. The idea that developers are going to develop a property and not get the most that they can out of it without something in the ordinance to compel them to do so is, I think, really a fantastic idea, but it's not reality. I wish it was, and perhaps Mr. Wagner or Councilman Wagner will do that with his lot. And if you go for a variance, which would be the process to do that, by all means, have at it. But nobody knows about this. I am active in all of this stuff. I get so many emails, it's ridiculous. And I would not have known about this. I would have read affordable housing ordinance. Sounds great, but that's not what it is. So I have these 8 points, but the main thing is that the critical assumption that people are going to charge less for these lots is untrue. And if you're one of the council members that I emailed earlier with an example from in Maryville where a house was purchased for $60,000 2 years ago, went on the market in January for $349,000. It is under contract for $339,000 right now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would anyone else like to be heard? Hearing none, it goes to council. Councilmember Lewis.
I move that we accept the recommendation of the Planning Commission and don't approve this order.
The approval, the motion, repeat the motion, please.
That we have approved the recommendation of the Planning Commission. They're not approving.
He's moving to disapprove. Okay. All right.
Now, I'm not finished, but I got a question to staff.
Yes, sir.
Usually they don't go against the recommendation of the Planning Commission. For some reason, I don't know why they are. But I'm going to tell you one thing. The people from Ashleyville were against this from the beginning before it really was brought up. One of the things that Ashleyville was promised when it was annexed into the city of Charleston, that those lots in Ashleyville would remain 50 by 100. This will be the second time the city would be reneging on it. They had to fight, went to the Planning Commission, Ms. Hamilton went to the Avery Institute, did the research to prove what the city had promised them. That's when the BZA decided to go along with the neighborhood and did not approve the variance that the gentleman wanted to come to build these, I think it was 6 units at that time. But we annexed people into the city, we promised them something, then years later we renege on it. This is a good neighborhood. I got to say, this is one of my best neighborhood organizations. Okay? one of my best. Okay? But it's a neighborhood that takes care of the neighborhood. And like Ms. Small said, some of those streets are very small. And they just want, you know, we hear from folks all the time, downtown, below Broad and stuff, my quality of life. Well, they want their quality of life. Let's not take it away from them. That's all I ask. I ask members of the city council not to approve this ordinance.
Second.
Well, we have one. I think
We have a second already. Councilmember Waring? Oh, Griffin.
Yeah, Griffin second.
Okay.
A couple of things that need to be addressed. The good lady that came up, as a matter of fact, this is one of my good neighborhood associations also, and said that the property that I have spoke directly to me is not 50 by 100. That's just incorrect. As a matter of fact, the plat, I've taken the plat to the neighborhood association. They saw that almost 2 years ago. Each property has 50-foot frontage and the depth is 100 feet. So that's just not accurate. This will reduce the cost of housing. You know why? Because it reduces the cost of land. You only qualify for this ordinance if you build affordable housing. If you build market rate housing, you do not qualify for this zoning. It would be great if a lot of developers in the city of Charleston said, I saw this ordinance and I want to build affordable housing. The problem is we don't have the private sector building affordable housing. We know the escalation, the exponential cost of housing. And as a matter of fact, the lady who pointed out the house at $60,000 in Asheville that's under contract for $330, whatever, that's a good example of the escalation. If that, in fact, is true, a house bought for $60 is under contract for $333 or whatever the number was in Asheville. How do you do something about that? It is not the cost of a 2x4. It's not the cost of the shingles. The land cost is what's getting away from all of us in the city of Charleston. As land costs increase, that's reflected in the final cost of housing everywhere. But to limit those comments, I want to correct that issue about me developing smaller lots than what's already platted in Asheville. That's just not accurate.
Yes, sir.
But in the months of discussing this with my colleagues, Councilman Lewis knows this, the neighborhood, through discussion with Councilman Lewis and myself, came up with what we thought was a pretty good compromise. And I forwarded that compromise, but it did not make it before the Planning Commission. So and it's a compromise that I believe would protect Ashleyville and certainly protect this ordinance for affordability throughout the city. The suggestion was an exception for any platted neighborhoods that were former municipalities or townships. Maryville, the town of Maryville having been a township, that should be written into this ordinance. That did not make it to the Planning Commission prior to the Planning Commission vote. And for colleagues around the table, out of the 9 members of the Planning Commission, 5 were there, and the vote was 3-2. So now it's going to require us 10 out of 13. And you all knew we've been working on this, I think, or you know that we've been working on this, I think, since late September. It's been at the Planning Commission for 5 months before it came back in front of us. We put a lot of work into trying to create a piece of legislation that specifically speaks to affordable housing. But for smaller lots, you would not have Ansonbar. But for smaller lots, you would not have the French Quarter. We just got through talking about an example of affordable housing that we didn't give an applaud, but we certainly saluted, that Ms. Gianna Shaw Johnson is building the Katrina Cottages on. The cost of that one lot was $70,000, and 3 units going to be placed. Now, this is on the peninsula. It's going to be placed on that. So that $70,000 is going to be spread across, the cost of one lot at $70,000 is going to be spread across the cost of 3 homes. That does reduce the price of housing. My amendment would be, if the motion is withdrawn, that we pass this with an overlay district that protects historic townships and municipalities as chartered municipalities as a exception to this ordinance. Now, I don't know of any townships that were chartered in the city of Charleston. There may be some other ones around, but the only one that I'm familiar with is the town of Maryville. Mr. Lindsay, can you come and speak to that overlay? And that was not in front of the Planning Commission. They didn't have that to consider. So we'd like to send that back to the Planning Commission with this passage.
Well, if that's the will of council, we would certainly do more research as much as we can into the matter and determine the feasibility and move forward with it if it's possible.
So the idea of trying to protect the historic township that's there, we are all on the same page with that. I am not in disagreement with that. As a matter of fact, if it were not for the dialogue going back and forth, having the ability to agree and disagree, I don't think that solution would have bubbled up, quite frankly. There was talk about, putting it in, what's the historic Charleston or whatever that, what do you call the thing?
Preservation Society.
The Preservation Society and all of this. That would be overbearing in that community. They couldn't paint shutters on their houses without getting approval. An exception from this rule, due to the township that previously existed, certainly makes sense. An overlay district can be drawn over Maryville and Ashleyville that would create that, and we just need to get the legalities of that done. But to accept an affordable ordinance that would apply to the city of Charleston, and you only qualify for this if you build affordable housing in accordance with the price guidelines of our housing department as set up by the federal government, it certainly would be an opportunity lost.
Councilmember Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Waring. I certainly would support some sort of an amendment that does exactly what you're talking about for Maryville, Ashleyville. I have two things. First, I have a question that I hope you can answer, Mr. Lindsay, and just remind us in the chamber, what are the terms of the affordability? I know that it's the less than 120% area median income for any property that's going to be owned, and 80% or less of any property that would remain rental. But for how long would we enjoy that affordability?
That is really a question for Ms. Gianna Shaw Johnson. The ordinance says it's as defined by our Department of Housing and Community Development. So it would have to qualify under her guidelines for what makes an affordable house that she builds under her programs.
For how
many years
would it have to be retained to be affordable?
And Mr. Morgan has been looking through the ordinance. Says it's 90 years.
90 years.
It's written.
90 years.
90 years.
So that's codified in the ordinances.
That component is in the ordinance.
Correct.
But the qualification to become affordable is as defined by HCD.
So may I ask a question? But you mentioned Rosemount. So these kinds of adjustments to the property lines are possible with a variance, correct?
Mayor, they are possible with a variance. That's correct.
So this makes it easier for affordable housing developer or the city to get the approval to adjust to a smaller lot and make them more affordable. So I would just like to say I applaud Councilmember Waring for pursuing the effort to try to make affordable housing more affordable in the city of Charleston, and we all have that common goal. Secondly, I must say, in all seriousness, in reality, that given that requirement that you would have to legally dedicate your property for 90 years to be sold to someone within that income range, very few people are going to do that. And you're not going to find this happening very often. In fact, the only people that normally do it is us and the housing authority and some nonprofit housing developer. So that being said, I applaud the effort. I do think we need to respect the wishes of these neighborhoods. They've been very consistently concerned about it, and you know, it's part of protecting the real and perceived quality of life in their neighborhood. And one of the goals, particularly of the West Ashley Master Plan, was to preserve neighborhoods. So I would support an amendment as proposed, as discussed here. It's not on the floor, that it would exclude these neighborhoods, because I feel like the overall goal is good, even though I don't think a lot of people would take advantage of it. As the motion stands, without the amendment, I would vote to support the denial, disapproval. Yes, sir. Councilmember Shea.
Thank you, Mayor. And as you mentioned earlier, the Plan West Ashley specifically talked about maintaining the character of these neighborhoods, particularly Maryville, Ashleyville, and Magnolia neighborhoods. And Ms. Hamilton has schooled me on numerous occasions as to the historical significance of this property. Councilmember Lewis and Councilmember Waring and myself at the last neighborhood association meeting took a tour of the area. We looked at the 7 houses that were under construction. In my concern with this property, and Mr. Lindsay had mentioned this word, gentrification of this area, and it is a great concern to me and to all of us, I think, who represent a portion. This is one of these neighborhoods that's got maybe over-representation on council, because all 3 of us have a portion of this property in our individual districts. And so we show up for these meetings, and I meet with these neighborhood presidents on a regular basis, and I know what the problems are, and it's going to be exasperated when you go out there and you walk and see what we're about to erect with the Bender Street Park, and you go out there and see this property. It's pristine. It's absolutely beautiful, and the character of this neighborhood is such that it deserves 100% of our attention and 100% of our concerns to make sure that we maintain the character of what these folks are talking about, because this property's been in generations, and their families for generations. My question with Mr. Lindsay is, what other tools do we have available to avoid having this property turn into it being gentrification taking place into this area? Because I think the intent here is to provide a mechanism for affordable housing outside of the Maryville, Asheville, and Magnolia property area. So what can we do procedurally if we do that? If we put this umbrella around this neighborhood, what other steps do we have available? What other tools do we have available to protect these neighborhoods, to take care of the concern that you just raised?
Are you referring just to Asheville, Maryville?
And Magnolia.
Well, we would need to study those areas specifically, of course. But you know, an ordinance like this does not stop gentrification. It doesn't prevent houses from being built at market rate on lots and being sold for lots of money. It doesn't stop that. It just speeds up the delivery of affordable housing to be built on those lots before they can become expensive market rate homes. And if we were to study this again, that's basically what I would tell you again, because we don't have the ability to regulate property values, of course. So we would be happy to study those things in further depth.
So let me ask one more question to sort of make sure that we're on the procedural correct course. So the motion from Councilmember Lewis and seconded by Councilmember Griffin is to right now affirm the denial.
Correct. So we would not require a 3/4 vote for this motion to succeed. Only 7 votes.
Only 7 votes.
Because we're agreeing with the Planning Commission.
Agreeing with planning.
Excuse me?
He's done it in reverse.
Right. That's correct.
4 votes.
If, in order to get an amendment, in order to get the amendment to carve out Maryville, Asheville, Magnolia, how do we do that procedurally? I'm looking for legal to make sure that we do this properly, because every time we get into this quagmire. That's right.
Well, we save a step if we do it tonight. Anyway.
And I think the proper thing would to do to send it back to the planning, because if we amend the motion,
we have to send it back.
With the amendment, then we're going to have to take.
We have to send it back.
We have to take the most votes, because you'll be overriding the planning commission. But if we just send this back to the planning commission and make sure that staff add the amendments to it, that's what we need to do.
That's why I want to make sure we've got legal up here to give us the right answer on that.
Jana, is there something? So, Council, I want us to be mindful of, if the City of Charleston or those organizations that we support are not building on lots, then who is? Our market rate developers, which means you're going to have houses that cost more in those particular neighborhoods. And I have much respect for the Ashleyville, Maryville community. My mother grew up west of the Ashley. But I want us to be mindful of, and you all will see when I bring the contracts before you for the houses that we built, we complied because that's what we were asked to do relative to the houses that we built in that community. But those houses are expensive. They are affordable, but just as you saw subsidy that will come on those properties, those 3 properties that we're constructing in the west side and east side, same rule applies here, and it may be higher. So let me just share that with you, because construction costs right now are pretty phenomenal. And so we've already seen in that community, because it is a desirable community, the cost of lots are gone up. So soon we'll be priced out, and we can't build in that community. So naturally, if we aren't building, the market rate folks will be building. So we need to be cognizant that, yes, we're talking about Maryville, Ashleyville, but this is an application for the entirety of the City of Charleston. And to the point relative to BZA, anytime we have to stop production to go to a committee and request approval, that slows down production. So whereas we would like to see affordable housing enhanced, I sat at a conference, at the economic conference that the chamber sponsored today, and one of the 3 things that the economists ended with was, we aren't building enough housing. Well, surprise, surprise, we know that. But if this is one that actually supports the construction of housing, we just want to be cognizant of the decision we make relative to that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Jackson.
But, Mr. Mayor, can I get an answer to my question first?
Okay.
My question was, what is the procedural mechanism we need to go through now in order to address Councilmember Waring's?
I think Councilmember Lewis would have to accept an amendment since he's made a motion.
That's right, and then with a vote of 7, and then it would go back to the Planning Commission.
Right.
And we would save one step in the process if we did something tonight as opposed to doing nothing tonight.
Or you could vote, to affirm the disapproval and instruct instruct staff to come back with a new ordinance at the next meeting, and then that would go to the Planning Commission.
Either way would work.
Well, the only thing with the Planning Commission, it was there for 5 months. It's only 12 months in the year. If we can save a step in the process, one thing, since I have the floor, Mr. Mayor, you didn't recognize me. I jumped in front of Councilor Jackson. While we're actually studying the overlay, the legalities of the overlay, which we've done overlays for school districts, and overlays are very successful in this city. And I've said this a number of times at the Neighborhood Association meeting. The threat to Ashleyville, Maryville is not, in particular Ashleyville, because it borders on the water, is not smaller lots. It is developers coming in, buying 2, 3 houses at a time and abandoning property lots. The 50 by 100, no argument with me.
Right.
But the moment somebody comes in and buys 2 or 3 lots and abandon property lots, then you begin to put McMansions on the waterway. That drives up the price of housing exponentially. There is nothing that prevents that, and I've made mention to the neighborhood, we need to come up with a mechanism, hopefully, which the neighborhood would have to agree to, the property owners would have to agree to, I suspect, not to have, because you lose the village concept when property lines are abandoned. The property that I was called out on is 306 feet on frontage on Main Street, and we're putting 6 lots there. That's right, we're putting 6 lots there. If you divide 306 by 6, you get 50 some odd feet per lot. That's just a fact. But suppose I didn't put 650 by 100 lots there, and I want to put 2 houses at 150-foot frontage. I could put a pretty big house there. And I could charge a pretty good price for that. So that's not my goal. My goal is to keep the village as it was. And if you want to look at an example of what I'm talking about, look at the old village in Mount Pleasant. That used to be a community very much like Ashleyville, little 50 by 100 lots. Go and look at the McMansions that have been built in the old village in Mount Pleasant. The people who were born and reared and families that were there are no longer there. Are no longer there. So if there's a way that we can come up with a mechanism, and this is where Councilman Shaheed may have been headed down, to protect this community more, and even Magnolia, about not having property lines be abandoned in these little villages. Let me tell you, that would go a long way to keeping it as a village, as opposed to eventually being bought out and the character really being changed in a large way.
And you're absolutely right. Overlay districts can be very successful.
Right.
In the case of our accommodations overlay district, I would argue that it's too successful. That just sounds for Jackson.
Thank you. I almost forgot what I was going to say, Councilmember Waring, but I just wanted to make a couple of points because this goes back to a theme that I'm going to continue to return to in our ability to work better with the Planning Commission on the planning side of things. And I do think that those of us who were at the joint work session that we had back in December left there knowing that we were pretty much all in agreement that this kind of ordinance was going toward achieving the spirit of the law. None of us wanted to see affordable housing bump up against the constraints and the difficulties that were being, were explained to us with needing to get variances and all of that. And certainly, no one at that joint meeting wanted to make a move that would be detrimental to the oldest black neighborhood in West Ashley. So we left that meeting agreeing that we were going to have our staff and others think more strategically about how we might be able to benefit affordable housing as well as protect Maryville, Ashleyville, and any other neighborhoods that would be similarly at risk of gentrification. And then we never had another joint work session. And the only reason that it took them 5 meetings to take this vote, Councilmember Waring, was because for those reasons. They wanted to protect the people that were being faithful to educate them about the impact of doing something like this. And they also wanted to hear from staff about better ways of doing affordable housing. So I do think that we're onto something here in terms of having an overlay district. I would recommend that we vote in favor of Mr. Lewis's, Councilmember Lewis's motion so that we can send it back to the planning staff for an overlay design that would work for a lot of these purposes. And at the same time, I don't understand why we can't give exceptions to variances to affordability. That seems like it would be within our wheelhouse as a municipality. Thank you.
All right. So, Councilmember Griffin.
I just want to say that, kind of unrelated, but related to this. Before we vote on new terms for these commission members, I want to see how often they're showing up to these meetings, because I think it's despicable that we've got 5 people that show up to these meetings. I know this isn't the first time. So I know one of you two is at all the meetings, and I'm sure they're taking attendance. I'm be happy to vote these people off that aren't showing up to these meetings.
All right. Thank you. So we have a motion on the floor. Can I
do have a procedural question.
Yes, sir.
We gave it first reading and I think we will send it back and ask staff to do the overlay. When it comes back, will it be a second reading? No, we gave it first reading when we sent it.
We'll need a first reading.
I mean, so we have to go, when it comes back, will it be a second reading?
I think that you would need a first reading with an ordinance in front of you. Right now, we don't have the draft ordinance that describes it, so I think the next time would be your first.
We're just amending the ordinance that, hopefully we're going to amend the ordinance that's in front of us.
I defer to our parliamentarian.
It depends on how this plays out.
You're right, you're right.
Yeah.
If we were to amend the ordinance
yes, sir.
that was sent to us, to have the overlay district and send that back to the Planning Commission, then when it comes back, will it be a second or third reading?
It would, let's see, a motion to amend. So you would give it first reading tonight, but the problem is I don't think we know what that, I don't think we know what that ordinance should say at this point. Okay. So
this is third reading? Okay.
It's third reading tonight for this.
Well, I thought it was second reading. Forget what I said then.
Yeah.
I guess we got to start all over again.
I think that would be cleaner.
That's the way to do it.
All right. So our motion on the floor from Councilmember Lewis is to agree with the Planning Commission to disapprove this ordinance. All in favor of disapproving the ordinance, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. The ordinance is disapproved.
Now we can direct staff to go put together another ordinance and bring it back to us.
We can.
It'd be done in the motion form to do that?
You can do it in a motion, that's fine, and for the record.
It'd be fine to make a motion.
We can do it in the form of a motion. We ask staff to...
No, we direct staff. We direct.
I stand corrected. I stand corrected.
Were you in the Navy?
I'd like to make a motion that we direct staff to put together an ordinance including a overlay district that gives an exemption to former township and municipalities from this ordinance. No, well, thank you.
And bring it back.
Okay, so I have council member.
Is that realistic
Well,
to
no,
bring it
I have
back
lots
to
of
the next
seconds. I have council member Waring's motion seconded originally by council member Shealy.
Right.
Okay.
And council member, I just checked with Jacob, and he said we can bring that back at the next meeting.
That'd be great. And I will tell you now, I want to give credit to this, to the neighborhood. Those long, arduous meetings, the idea, believe it or not, can we get a historic exemption is the one that led to the suggestion of an overlay. So
that's right.
Democracy
Thank
works.
You.
Thank you.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Next is approval of our city council minutes from February 12th. Any changes, deletions? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Next is our citizens' participation period. We have a short list of folks to speak, but I'm going to ask y'all, given the meeting has drug on a little bit, to keep your remarks to a minute and a half, 90 seconds.
Can we give a 2-minute break?
No.
They said let's go on.
No, let's keep going. Let's bid adieu to our naval friends from the USS Charleston. Y'all have a great week in Charleston this week, and we will see you Friday and Saturday. And we had on everyone's desk a piece of artwork of the USS Charleston. And there's a gentleman, I forget his name, he's an amateur artist, and he does these pencil drawings of every new U.S. Navy vessel. And he did the Ralph Johnson as well. He was here when we had the commissioning of the Ralph Johnson. So this same artist did this print of the USS Charleston that you all have on your desks. I just thought I'd share that with you. Thank you all for being with us. Okay, we're going to call out public participation. Participants, please give your name and address, 90 seconds. Yes, ma'am.
Muhammad Idris, Marsha Higgins, this may be some of the same people, Janet Ashley, Diane Hamilton, Annette Smalls. I think they may have signed up on this inadvertently. That's right. So let's do Muhammad Idris and Mark Knapp. I don't know what this is.
Mr. Idris.
Evening, Mayor, City Council, Muhammad Idris. I suggest that you all, leaders, read this magazine, but these distinguished men, the founding fathers of our country, they did a wonderful job. What happened in this council last year on December the 18th, 2018, and what I am presenting to you all this evening, February the 26th, 2019, is no accident. Here's what I'm saying. The reason we are having City Council meeting on the 18th instead of the appointed date, which would have been the 25th of December 2018, it would have been on the day that the country celebrated the birth of Jesus Christ. So City Council meeting was held on the 18th, which was the birthday of our councilman from the 11th district, very significant. On this date, February the 26th, 1930, 89 years ago, the Nation of Islam started Savior Day, which was a response to the celebration of Christmas, which they consider a promotion of white supremacy. In 1975, after the physical death of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, the new leader, the late Imam Wazir Muhammad discontinued celebration until he taught the purpose of what Savior Day meant and why it was being taught in the manner it was being taught. He restated the teaching in 202 here in Charleston. Tomorrow we will be at Julian Divine Community Center sharing the positive result with the community between hours of 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. Come join us in this eye-opening event. Our mission is to bury the dead body of racism, which was killed in 1975 with the formula that was given to humanity 1,000 years before it was started by Prophet Muhammad.
Time.
volume of information is what happened here on the 18th, and the information that I have placed it in your hands this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, Mark.
Oh, Lord. You know, I keep coming back to this silly drainage project, mainly because I'm unfortunately having to deal with the so-called engineers over at the Intermodal Center, and it really concerns me that this $40+ million thing just popped up like a jack-in-the-box. Nobody knew about it, and it basically blindsided everybody. I want to know who knew about it. I want to know who was signing off on this stuff. And really, I think we need to start looking and getting a SLED investigation into this. I mean, these engineers over there miscalculated the grades on all the pipe. They put it at what we call a 0.35%. Well, guess what? They missed it by a full decimal point. This is a first grade mistake. Should have been 0.035. I am truly concerned that we're getting taken to the cleaners by these folks, and somebody needs to start an investigation into what's going on with this thing. I mean, I have never seen a project this outrageously over budget with nobody knowing about it till the last minute. Somebody's got their hand in the cookie jar. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Please come forward.
Thank you. My name is James Ledley, and I live at 3 Lowndes Point Drive. I am here today to thank the city for the wonderful work that you have done to renovate and improve the Corrine Jones Playground and Park. It is my local park. The city, in partnership with Charleston Parks Conservancy and with neighborhood residents, developed a comprehensive plan in 2010 to improve the park, outlined in a master plan that contains several phases. The first phase has been very successful, and we are loving our park and the playground. However, I am here to ask for your help in a more urgent area of concern for me today, and that is the safety in the park. When the master plan was developed, the second phase was for the complete replacement of aging tennis courts and basketball courts at Corrine Jones. In 2010, it was known that these courts needed immediate replacement. However, in 2019, the situation has grown more dire. The useful life of a tennis court is 25 years. The tennis courts at Corrine Jones are far older and in need of immediate attention. There are cracks, the surface play is uneven, water collects, and it makes it dangerous for play. In addition, the courts are too small. They're 120 by 120 is the standard. They're 100 by 114 feet, which means that if both courts are being used, it's dangerous for the players. This is not a new problem. In 2015, the conditions at Corrine Jones tennis courts were so bad that the courts were closed to the public for safety reasons. The city did put a Band-Aid on that is held for a number of years, but that Band-Aid is worn off. The court surfaces are again cracked, uneven, it's unsafe, and its time has come to bite the bullet and replace these courts so that they can continue to be useful for another 25 years. This project is already on the unfunded capital projects list. However, as I understand it, there's no prioritization on the list. I've been asking for years that this be addressed. I'm here today asking that it be done this year, and if the money's not available this year, then in 2020. I'm just trying to bring it to your attention. Thank you for your service. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. I will look into that, but I will make a comment because you can learn how to play basketball even if the court is downsized a little bit. I'll give you an example. I live right across the street from, I used to call it the Hester Street Playground. We were at the corner of Peachtree and Hester for a while, and that's where my sons learned to play basketball. And if I may brag, my son Joseph went on to play for Wofford, which is now ranked number 24 in the country, and twice he went to the NCAA tournament. And he learned to play at that very basketball court. So I get you about improving the cracks, but you can still learn to play basketball with a little smaller court. All right. Did anybody? Did anyone else sign up? There was a little confusion. I think some people signed up for the public hearing, even though they didn't have to. Anybody else want to be heard? All right.
So next comes up the appointment of our Director of Stormwater Management. I've recommended to you in a memo Mr. Matt Fountain. He's with us tonight. Matt, if you'd come forward just to be available if there's a question. He's currently had served as the Technical Programs Manager at Charleston County. He's both a registered engineer and a registered geologist. He knows the landscape of the low country and our drainage situation. We've worked closely with him over the last few years, our staff. They're all looking forward to working with Matt as our new leader of this new department. Any questions or discussions? Matt, would you like to offer any comment? Please do so.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. Only that I'm really looking forward to us working together on the vision for stormwater management and trying to use that to create some priorities and short-term goals that we can actually act on, and refining our procedures to communicate our results with you.
Thank you, sir. Any questions? Mr. Griffin. He has an anticipated start date, which is?
18th, the 18th.
March 18th. Yes, sir.
Don't give it out yet. I've got it.
Do we vote on this?
Yes, we do.
So moved.
So moved. We have a motion to approve and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Next, our Director of Public Service that I sent out a very short memo because he needs no introduction, our own Tom O'Brien. Tom, you want to come forward? He's done quite a remarkable job over the last few weeks as our interim Director of Public Service, and together with Matt, we're going to have an incredible team to make improvements going forward in both the old functions of public service and the new stormwater functions as well. Tom, would you like to address the council?
Yes, sir, Mayor and members of the council, thank you very much. I look forward to continuing to serve, and I just want to say I'd like to thank you for your vision in creating these two departments. Matt and I have known each other a long time and look forward to a great relationship and working and doing great things for y'all and our citizens.
Second. We have a motion to approve and a second. Any comments?
I just wanted to thank Mr. O'Brien for his stepping in and wearing multiple hats during the period of time of Laura's leaving and of course the onboarding of a new stormwater director. And I mean, by acclamation, his customer service has been second to none in the 7 years that I've been on council. So, you know, I wish we could, I hope that this new position does come with a pay raise, I hope.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. Really? Oh, wait a minute.
But thank you. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Any further comment? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Next, this particular position does not require a council approval, but I wanted to introduce to you Lakeisha Cofield, who is our new municipal court director. Please come forward. She's an amazing young woman who hails to us from Georgia, and early in her career, after graduating from Emory University and the University of West Georgia, she was dedicated to domestic violence as an advocate to victims of domestic violence, and really has a heart and passion for that. But in seeking self-fulfillment and improvement, she moved into court administration and has led 2 small towns as a municipal court manager, and we're so pleased that she applied here in Charleston. We're glad to have you, Lakeisha. If you'd like to address council, please do so.
Good evening, Council and Mayor. Thank you for that introduction. I'm very excited and grateful for this opportunity to be a part of the city. I came here several years ago for a work conference, and this was one city that I'm glad that I'm able to actually be a part of and use my experience. I can say I've worked in several different courts over a course of 16 years in my career, and this is one court that I can truly say is well organized, and as of right now, I don't really see a whole lot that needs to be changed. It's from what I've seen over the last 3.5 weeks is well organized, but I'm sure there are always some things that, you know, that will come along that could make it a better court. if you all have any questions. I don't have any business cards, but you can send me an email, call. I do have a work cell, but I'm very grateful to be here.
Councilmember Lewis?
You've replaced Sylvia Skeeter?
Yes.
That's correct.
Very good.
Yes,
Sylvia
so I have some
retired
really
after
big
25
shoes to
years.
fill. Yes.
Yes, that's right. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
Glad to have you. So, next we have 3 more reappointment matters. One is Ed Carnsberg to the Charleston Housing Authority. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Any opposed? And then the next 2 are council reappointments to both the COG and Chats.
Second.
Both Mayor 5 and 6.
For both 5 and 6. Councilmember Shade?
Mr. Mayor, I just want to take this opportunity, and I can't remember exactly when I made this request, but we have had this issue when you or members of our council serve on these boards. Oftentimes, I think almost always, you'll have to recuse yourself from consideration because of the Attorney General's opinion that said that it's a conflict of interest. And I've asked, and I'm looking at Susan, staff to look into this, because I think it's unfair that when we have issues that come up that affect these particular boards or committees, that we are deprived of your expertise and knowledge of what's going on with that. And I just think it's just, even though it's a Attorney General's opinion on this, that we need to have y'all weigh in on these issues that pop up from time to time. So I don't know where we are with that, but I just want to reemphasize us looking into whether or not you are in fact conflicted out if you're on these boards.
We can provide you all with some direction on this because there is the AG opinion, but there's a difference with these appointments in that they are city council approved appointments to sit on city designated boards that we have a partnership with. So it's a little bit different than you being asked to sit on the Gilliard Auditorium Board, and that's not a formal city appointment. But I understand there's some confusion on the issue, and we will look at that and provide you with some guidance.
It may be if these 2 are an exception to that AG's opinion, maybe we need to look at those appointments and put them under the same category that these are. And if we can do that, I think that would clarify and get this confusion out of the system.
Right. Yes, sir.
All right, Councilmember Waring.
I just want to thank Councilman Shaheed for that, because in serving in those other capacities, I look at myself as being the eyes and ears of the city. So when you get conflicted out on an issue, you can't speak to it. You're muffled. So, and I say that with respect to the Gilliard, with respect to the
African American Museum.
I don't know if anybody's on the Gibbs Museum board, but the same thing. I mean,
and it's not like we have a financial interest.
We don't have a financial interest.
Right.
Anyway, but thank you.
I think the issue there is concern about divided loyalties. I mean, and that's what has to be looked at. So in any event, we will look into this more closely and try to provide some better guidance.
If the Gilliard has a deficit, as a representative from the city on the Gilliard board, it is not in the interest of the Gilliard or the city of Charleston for the Gilliard to have a deficit. And I'll give you an example. If the Gilliard has a deficit, you know what the article is going to say in the newspaper? The city of Charleston Gilliard Center has a deficit. We join that to help. So I just, again, I look at it from the standpoint of being on city council, from the vision of the city councilman and what's best for the city of Charleston. So,
all right. We have numbers 5 and 6 on the floor. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Now I do want to share with council, there are a number of our other committee appointments that are coming up end of February and in March. And I had a number. If you recall, what I like to do is put on your desk some appointments for the next meeting. I had 4 or 5 and lacking 1 or 2 that weren't quite ready yet. So if it's okay with council, I will email you tomorrow with like a little slew of these committee appointments for your consideration for the next meeting. So you'll have 2 weeks still to look at them. Yes, sir.
I want to pick up on what Councilman Griffin said about the attendance.
Yes, sir.
And that doesn't go for the planning. That goes for all of these commissions that we appoint. I'd like to see how many of them are attending the meetings on a regular basis.
Absolutely.
If we're going to reappoint them, that is.
Right.
So
just to let you know, at this point, we are asking our staff that manages whatever committee, whether the folks who, if we're going to reappoint them, whether in fact they're regular attendees or not. But I haven't been getting like a percentage, but I do ask the question.
yeah, and following up on that, some of these boards, I know the Planning Commission particularly has requirements that these people attend some kind of continuing education, so many hours a year, and I don't think they're doing that either. Maybe I'm mistaken, but I think there ought to be an accounting of that. I'm directed at Mr. Lindsay because I thought he might know, but I don't.
I do. We're aware of the ongoing education requirements. We do offer ongoing education requirements for our board and commission members, many of whom do attend. We have webinars, we have seminars, so some of them do avail themselves of that. But I'm not familiar, I'm not prepared to report back on exactly who is and isn't up to date, because I'm sure that there are some who don't attend every one, of course.
All right. Councilmember Seekins, you good?
I agree.
Okay.
Especially the ones that are of record, that we keep minutes of, that are in the chain of the building of our ordinances. I mean, I think that's really important to make sure we get continuity. I mean, we show up, and so we know what happened last week, the week before, and we may agree or disagree, but we know what we're agreeing or disagreeing on.
Right.
Especially with the Planning Commission, the BAR, those are huge for us.
Right, sure. So maybe give me one more day. I might double check a few of those names before I send out that memo. Okay, but it'll be in the next couple of days. Okay, now our council committee reports. Councilmember Seekins, Committee on Traffic and Transportation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We took a report from our Director of Traffic and Transportation on our speed hump program. They're ahead of it this year. They've taken the money, they've used it wisely for both the building of some new speed humps and some maintenance. They gave us a report on 6 projects that are going forward, 2 of which I think are more important than the others. You'll see that the first 4 are simply speed humps that are going into neighborhoods, 2 on Johns Island, 1 on Daniel Island. Apparently they're speeding up there, Councilmember White. I don't know, slow them down. One's at Carolina Bay. Councilmember Wagner was all over those. We reported to Councilmember Shealy. Betsy Road is one where we're going to put a speed hump in. There's already 3 there. We're going to put a 4th in. It's subject to DOT approval, so that one is going to go back to the DOT for its approval. And lastly, you'll see Line Street. That is a project that is ongoing. We're in the process of turning into 2 ways. For those of you who have not sat on this council for more than 7 years, we actually approved that 7 years ago. So here we go. Line Street's going to be converted to 2 ways, and at the same time is going to get a traffic calming device. So I just want to thank Mr. Benjamin, Mr. Somerville, and the entire staff. They really worked hard on this. We gave them some more money, and they've taken it to heart. They really thought about it. It's great to see staff doing that because they were advocates for us to do this. They've thought about it. They're very prepared, they're ready to go, so I don't know if they're still here, but I really want to thank them for that. And I don't think any of this needs approval, it just is for information to y'all. If you have any requests from your district about speed humps, please call Mr. Benjamin directly and just let the committee know, okay?
Councilmember Jackson.
I just wanted to add to our Chairman Seeking's report because I thought it was very impressive that not only have they, done their homework about how to make the most out of the little bit of extra budget money that we were able to fund this year, but they said in the process they've caught up with their backlog, or they will. So
There was a focus on maintenance in addition to.
And I forgot one other thing that is important, Mr. Mayor. We also got a report in writing, if you all are interested in, we can send it to you, on all the paving projects in the city of Charleston that have been approved through the county, the transportation sales tax, all the different sources, and so we need to get you also, you see what's coming in your district in 2019, and there are some in your district. I was looking through all of them, so that's important. You all need to know what's going on.
All right.
Thank
you very much.
That concludes my report.
All right. Next, our Committee on Public Safety, Councilmember Shade.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We had a very lengthy meeting the other day. Go through on our agenda. We first heard from Amy Broch She is the director of Turning Leaf, which is a reentry program. She takes clients who are coming out of serving their prison sentence. These are high-risk individuals. These are men only. She has 50 enrollees to date, and she intends to increase this to 110 and up to 150. Her program is so successful that only 20% of these folks reoffend. She has 6 staff members on board. The average cost per client, this is very inexpensive, it's $5,000 per person. What's really important for us is that she has 16 of her graduates working for the City of Charleston, 2 of which are supervisor positions. So we support this program. It started under Chief Mullen. Mayor Raleigh was a big advocate of this program. It's one of the most successful reentry programs for people coming out of prison that we have supported, and we need to continue our support of that. Last week, there was a hate crime forum that was sponsored by the City Police Department, held at the Charleston Museum on the 20th. Those of us who attended were moved by the presentations from Mr. Joe Engel and from the widower Reverend Pinckney. Very proud that we had our city sponsor this project. We asked for an update on the audit process from the city. Lieutenant Jason Browder gave us an update as to what is taking place. They had one town hall meeting. It was not well attended. They're working on with Reverend Middleton to get the word out better, so these town hall meetings can be advertised and have folks attend these things. The next session for the auditors will take place between the 26th and the 30th of March. We'll get the word out as to the development with this audit. This is a long way to go. We asked for an update from Chief Courier as to the status of fire station number 16. This is located off Ashley Hall Plantation Road. It was slated for demolition. We had allocated $425,000 for this project. Initially, $125,000 has been spent on a design for a new firehouse. This property is in a low-lying area and is subject to flooding. It is in desperate need of repair, but because of the location of this property, they were trying to see if they could instead upgrade, and they can't. So we're in a holding pattern on where we're going to end up with this this redesign or rebuild of fire station number 16. I also wanted an update from Chief Courier as to the response to citizen calls. The fire department would respond to any call of a medical nature whatsoever, and we laughed about it, but even if someone was complaining about an ingrown toenail. So as a director from the mayor to sort of curtail these number of calls, the chief has eliminated responding to those type of non-emergency medical calls. To date, from January 1st to yesterday, we have received 452 less calls, which is an average of 8 per day. And he said that when we make these calls, it's usually 30 minutes out of the station, and I think that's a little bit longer. And so what we have done so far has curtailed the number of calls that we're making on these non-emergency medical calls. Half those medical calls come from the peninsula, and it requires that when we make these medical calls, we have to shift our personnel to make sure that we're covering the entire city. So we're down to where we were back in 2016, and we're making progress on that front. Lastly, we amended our agenda to receive a report from the chief. As many of y'all have been aware, there's an article in the newspaper. There was a story on NBC News on Sunday with the fatality of Mr. Nathaniel Rhodes, who was arrested in August of 2018. The story was that Mr. Rhodes was involved in a accident on the September P. Clark Parkway. It involved a 2-car accident. The police responded to this accident. There was an open container of alcohol. EMS came, and then this is where things started going south on this. Officer Kelly had his body camera on because he didn't have a in-car dash camera with this. EMS responded. Officer Kelly signed a form. No. Well, okay. All I can just say is this. Let me just say this. Once this news came out, the chief has referred the investigation of this to SLED, and that's where it's going right now. So we are headed, hopefully, with a full overview of what took place on the August 12th incident. And certain things are changing, but the chief has taken the initiative to make certain in-house changes on policies regarding this.
That's right. Thank you very much.
Move for the report of Public Safety Committee.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Now for our Committee on Public Works, Councilmember Waring.
There were anything that we voted on Public Works. Everything else was for information. We got an update on, well, the new stormwater appointee was introduced to the committee, and he was introduced under fire. I think I can say that. Of course, you heard from Mr. O'Brien already today. Spring Fishburne had an update, very limited. King Hugie had an update. It's progressing forward. Councilman Lewis, and then the floodplain manager, we had a discussion about the Freeboard update, and I know we'll have more discussions at council. So all of that was for information. So there was nothing to vote on. All of that was for information to the committee and now council. So thank you.
All right. And finally, our Committee on Ways and Means.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. We have one bill for second reading to change the age for our city's Palmetto artisan regulations. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. And we have a request to withdraw number 7 under
First reading.
first reading.
Okay. Third reading on.
Oh, well, yeah, third reading on the change in the Palmetto Artisans Program and ratification. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it.
That was Gregory, and who else? Okay, thank you.
Second.
We have a motion to withdraw number 7. Any discussion?
Okay, Councilmember White. I told him you would do that.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Now, I understand you all are going to a meeting in Washington, D.C. for National League of Cities. So our next meeting will not be on Tuesday, but will be on Thursday, March the 14th. We look forward to seeing you then. Any further business come before this body, we hereby stand adjourned.